you know what? I do love those intro credits you done that. They are so cool. Every time I see them, I just think they're fantastic. Well, good evening and welcome to episode number 282 of the Plain Talking UK podcast. I'm Carlos and I'm back after my 2 weeks leave doing various discos and weddings and discos and, well, you know, all those things that DJs love to do on a Friday and Saturday night. So hello to everyone who's joined us and welcome with me in the studio, as always, to the man who pushes all the right buttons, I should say, on the touchscreen. It's Matt Smith.
You're a little bit out of practice, are you?
I know, it's been a few
stumbling
weeks.
over his words. Yes. Hello, mate. Nice to have you back.
I know. I honestly, I've so missed you guys, really, really badly. You know when you're doing a gig, Matt, and you sort of think, oh, I'm just going to check in. Get the phone out.
Right.
YouTube,
okay, you shouldn't do that.
I know.
You shouldn't do that. It's
the customers can't see me. Trust me.
Right. Okay. I could also argue perhaps you need to get out more.
Yeah, that's probably.
That, yeah. Anyway.
Oh, anyway. So joining us as well this week, and he's another lord of all things tech. It's Neville Bounds.
Yes. Hello. Hope you're well. Good to see you back, Carlos. And well, it's going to be another fun-packed show. Lots to put in this week, and yeah, looking forward to it as always.
How have things been with you, Nev? How's the banana?
Anyway, moving on.
Okay, we'll move on. How's the Mac?
Oh dear. Well, I've had the brand new car is, what is it, 4 weeks old, and it's in the garage because it's got a faulty injector, so it doesn't really work properly. So I am driving around in a loan car, which is not a
Dodge
Ferrari
Viper?
or a Lambo.
No, okay.
No.
Now, obviously, we're all very aware. You've got a very nice car. It's it's a little Focus ST, isn't it? It's a bit of quality, I think, is for want of a better word. So obviously, because it's gone to, for understandable reasons, it's gone to a very respectable garage. Now, presumably, the loan car will also be fabulous.
Well, it's not. No, it's a 1 litre Corsa, and yeah, it's a bit like a lawnmower, really. But it will do for the next few days to get me around until I get my other car back. So
well, absolutely, yes. A part of me feels guilty now because you've now got to take a trip down to Biggin Hill at the weekend in it. But there we are.
I think
we'll have to see how we go.
You've been thrashing the car too much. I think that's what it is, Nev. You know, up and down the local sea fronts with the tunes blaring from the
right.
From the
okay, has he got a cherry bomb on his exhaust? Is he making all the
yeah.
Absolutely. Armando's gone completely
I know.
out here. He's like, what the hell is a cherry bomb?
Let's get him on there. And also joining us this week is our fourth awesome co-host of the show. It's the magical Armando.
Aw, thanks, Carlos. Really happy to be back. We do have the whole gang here today. Per our contract, we can only do this once a month, where Nev and I are on the same show.
Absolutely, so. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We really must talk to you about that injunction, by the way.
No, good to see you, Armando. How have things been with you?
Guys.
How's the flying going? You've been whizzing around the air lately?
Yeah, been doing a little bit of flying here and there in this Charlotte area, and the weather here definitely takes some getting used to. Every afternoon is thunderstorms. It's very much like Florida flying weather, where by about 3 p.m. you have to start dodging thunderstorms, and that gets a little interesting when dropping skydivers from 11,000 feet. So.
Ouch.
Yeah.
You haven't thrown the lovely wife from a plane again
for
lately?
goodness sake.
I did hear. I heard all about it.
Yeah, and I still have to put together a little video for that.
Yes,
but
you
the
do.
best part about it is she said she wanted to do it again.
Woohoo!
What's wrong
What,
with
not
you?
throw you out?
Yeah. Have you ever done it?
The stipulation was that I would go with her.
Right.
And
Hey.
Have you ever actually done it?
I have. I've done a couple tandems, and then I did a couple in the military where my first tandem ever was in Interlaken, Switzerland. and one of my good friends Mark and I were riding our Ducatis through Switzerland.
Oh, listen. It's like some kind of like they should hire you on the tourist board, for goodness sake. It's that whole sort of like, wow.
Or maybe I'd just become like a travel planner or something. But,
I love
it was awesome. I skydived out of a helicopter over Interlaken, and it was awesome. That was my first time.
There's a small thing that alarms me about the idea of that, because it's one of those scenarios where you want to make sure you don't want to jump up first, before you then fall down.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you want to get that departure of the aircraft just right.
So welcome everyone who's joined us on this Friday evening. Chat room's filling up nicely. Masha, hello to you, Masha. We've got Chris Griggs, Falco, we've got James Candraw, hello to you, James. Richard Adams, Jenny in Rome, who was sitting here last week in my seat.
Yeah.
Seat's nice
I
and
must
warm.
say the viewers sort of deteriorated somewhat since last
thank
week.
You. Love you too.
Yeah.
We've got podcast royalty in the chat room as well this evening. Captain Nick is joined us in there. Lisbo Nelson, hello to you, Nelson. Hope you are well. So it is. Let's just have a look at the. Oh, it's the 16th of August, and it's coming up to 7:10 here in the UK. So, you all right, Matt?
Yeah. I'm worried you've forgotten something. It's the start of the month.
Yes, I know.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I haven't got to that bit yet.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Honestly,
I read the show notes.
I know I've been away for 2 weeks,
yeah,
but
I was worried you'd forgotten about everything.
No. So we have got lots of stuff to get through in tonight's show. We've got obviously all the rundown of the latest weekly news, and there's been a few good things happening this week.
Some bad as well,
and some bad, yeah. We've also got a segment coming up in the show, which is a short interview that I took with one of the guys at the Bristol Aerospace, or Aerospace Bristol, when I was there a few weeks back, having a look around the museum, so that's coming up later. But first, we have got some housekeeping to do, and it's the beginning of the month, so we're going to hand things over to Nev.
Yes, of course, we cannot do this show without your support. So it's time for the dirty music, and to talk about all of the people that have contributed over the last 4 weeks. So thank you very much to Adam Spink, Andrew Wilson, Captain Jeff, a new contributor in the form of Chris Griggs. Thanks very much indeed, Chris. It's from Eric Graves, Evan Shue, Graham Haley, Jacob Darlington Brown, Jeff Ward, Jonathan Warner, Jordan Rose, Liz Piper, Masha, Matt Caton, Matt Donnemeyer, Myla, Owen, Neil Lamworn, Nicholas Hewitt, Nico, Philip Labe, Ray Williams, Ruben Wells, Ryan Harper, Stuart Backer, Stephanie Plummer, Steve Andress, Stuart Black, and also fantastic contributions from Jenny in Rome and Tony Stubbings. Thank you, one and all, for all of your fantastic contributions to our fund.
It does really, really help to push the show forward. We've got loads of content coming up this year in the kind of production phase, or the pre-production phase.
Well, of course, we've been using the funds a lot for some obviously, as you could probably see from behind us and stuff, there's been some very major upgrades to the studio.
Yeah, this is not a cloth anymore. This is an actual wall with green screen.
It's grade A wall, that's what that is, right behind you, yeah. And I must say, it's working a lot better.
It is, yeah. So if you want to become a patron of the show, you listen to the show and you love the show, and you want to help push us along, and you can afford it. Obviously, if you're doing flight training, we don't want your money, because we'd rather you fly aircraft and then come on the show as a guest.
But, amen to that.
If you've got a few pennies laying around the floor, unlike if you were living with me, because my wife Gemma is a magpie, and anything I leave laying around the house tends to disappear.
It's the shiny stuff, isn't it?
Yes. But if you can, take yourselves over to our website. And
you're
the
in
Patreon
so much
links
trouble
that.
for that.
I'm
going to clip that and send it to her. You realise that, don't you?
I know. I love that. That sounded so sweet.
Yeah, almost. Yes. It sounded so sweet until he finished.
I actually left her a note today before I left to come here to the studio, because I'd left some change on the side.
Right.
And I put a note
saying I know exactly how much is there.
Here we go, magpie. Lots of love. So that'll be gone
when
I get home.
Okay.
But take yourselves over to the website. All the links are there: Patreon and PayPal, and we can read out your name and give you a little shout out on the show. There we go. Oh, that was a bit abrupt.
Yeah, all right. I pressed the wrong button. Don't start.
Oh, so we are going to start the show then.
Oh,
as
God, blimey,
we
you
do
want me to do something else now,
each
don't you?
week. Stretch out the segue.
Yeah, do please.
Stretch out
Yeah.
the segue.
Yeah,
So we
I
are
can't
going to
find
start the
it.
show
Yeah.
each week.
Sorry,
as
I'm ready.
we
I'm
do,
ready. It's all good.
with a rundown of the weekly news from around the world and the UK. So if you're ready, Nev.
Yes, I am.
If you're ready, Armando.
Ready to go.
Matt.
You know, seamless. It's seamless every single
Let's
week.
go.
I am so getting that automatic thing so that somebody else can help me like when I'm doing
I know.
stuff
We need a knowing,
Yeah,
don't we?
yeah, absolutely.
in Dubai. But no, this is a story on the bbc.co.uk website, and most people would have seen this now. This broke, I think it was yesterday, actually, this happened yesterday afternoon. But this is all regarding a certain Airbus A321 from a Russian airline that had a slight issue yesterday, it's safe to say, in after takeoff. And this the story goes, so the headline, Russia, and this is a bird strike, collision with gull forces plane to land in a field. So a Russian passenger plane made an emergency landing in a cornfield near Moscow after striking a flock of birds. At least 74 people were injured in the incident, which saw the plane land with its engines off and landing gear retracted, emergency officials said. The Ural Airlines A321 was travelling to Simferopol in Crimea when it hit the flock of gulls shortly after takeoff, disrupting its engine. State media has dubbed the landing the Miracle on the Remensk.
Hasn't got the same ring to it as the Miracle on the Hudson, has it really?
No, not quite the same. So this, when this story broke, I caught this, it's actually in Sky News, I think it was, when I saw this come on. And there was a whole host of videos that go with this, which were taken by passengers on the plane during the flight. And actually, I think there was about 3 or 4 videos. One was during the takeoff, one was during the actual landing into the field, and the other one was after the plane was being evacuated by the passengers. And I think Matt's got the video there because he's good like that, you see.
He's trying. Anyway.
But I saw the video, which unfortunately was filmed in the incorrect way, as Nev would say.
It's right, but it's coming from the BBC, so
BBC.
they've tried to do something about
They've
it to
done
make
that
it
thing, yeah.
Nev friendly. It's all right.
But the actual crash, one of the engines I think actually caught fire, but the engine itself was ripped off when it came down the field. Armando, any thoughts? Obviously, I think this was seagulls.
Yeah, so I was reading the full article from our friends over at Aviation Herald, and they had a little bit more amplifying information where they stated that the aircraft got up to about 750 feet when they ingested the flock of seagulls. And then it really is a testament to the Airbus airframe. So now these are 2 Airbuses that have made these emergency landings and have largely come out unscathed. So the pilot elected to keep the gear up and land into this cornfield, which a cornfield is pretty soft when you're in a Cessna, but when you're in an Airbus, it's going to be pretty hard landing anyways. So fantastic job by the pilots. Very, very well done, where there was no post-crash fire. I think some of the fire footage came out from after the birds were ingested. It flamed out, but when the aircraft hit the ground, it did so perfectly, and everybody was able to evacuate via the slides. And just a fantastic job. Even in a Cessna or a light twin, we always brief what altitude you're going to try to make what we call the impossible turn back to the aircraft, to the airport. And usually in my brief, depending on the airplane, but that's usually around 800 feet. Anything below 800 feet, you're just going to pick a path, left or right, about 30 degrees, and you're just going to pick a field, and you brief that every single time you fly. So these pilots and this crew in this Airbus got up to about 750 feet and did the exact right thing. just a fantastic piloting job by the crew, and then a great evacuation job by the cabin crew.
Surely though, in defence of other airframes, for example, presumably this is more about the ability and the skill of the pilots and the people involved versus the airframe. You see what I mean? I mean, I dare say this same crew, if they were all type rated in a Boeing of some description, as an example, I dare say that their skill would have generated a similar result.
Absolutely. There's been many positive results from many airframes when they do emergency landings, and we often talk about the Swiss cheese model when things align for something to go wrong. Well, sometimes the Swiss cheese model works in your favor, and you have the right crew with the right aircraft with the right conditions and the right environment where they had this field to go into, and the Swiss cheese lines up in your favor and has a result like this one.
And again, it could have very easily been a different story if, for example, they were in a densely populated area without access to the Hudson, as an example. I mean, it's as you say, the right set of circumstances. With this is the marvelous thing about such qualified crew.
So a particular aircraft in question, this A321, first flew in 2003.
Okay.
So
Not an old one.
It's quite a fairly old aircraft,
it?
but 2003. Configured for 220 passengers, this one. But it's a third owner plane. 3 owners from new. This one.
Have you got the logbook there? Is that what you're right? Okay, it's busy.
But no, it's good to see these guys done a good job getting this aircraft in, and obviously there were injuries, but it could have been worse. Especially bearing in mind an aircraft taking off is going to have considerably more fuel on board than one that's coming in after a long flight. So
indeed.
Yeah, good work. So the next story, moving on, is it's a special one, obviously for you, Matt.
Yes. It's always whenever I open the show notes and I see that the first story I have is from the Sun newspaper, I mean, my heart just jumps into glee and joy. I don't know how you feel, Nev, obviously, when you see a headline.
Nev's favourite read.
Is it?
No.
Okay, moving on. The Sun newspaper. The headline is Ryan Scare. Oh dear. Story number 2, as you know, is always a Ryanair story. It says Ryan Scare. Ryanair terror as drunk passenger grabs emergency door at 35,000 feet on a flight to Tenerife. This is not good news. A furious dad has told of his terrifying ordeal on a Ryanair flight when a totally slaughtered holidaygoer was hanging off an emergency exit door mid-flight. So Alan Wild, 47, was travelling to Tenerife with his girlfriend and his 11-year-old stepson, but their flight from Manchester turned into a journey from hell. Alan, an engineer from Cheshire, said that they were sat in their seats when the boozed-up passenger boarded the flight on the 1st of August. He told The Sun Online, "We could hear some commotion going on at the front door. Basically, this guy got onto the plane and was absolutely hammered. He got to the door and he was swearing at the cabin crew at the top of his voice, to the point where my 11-year-old stepson commented on how drunk he was. He was telling them to pee off, and was being abusive and loud, but they didn't stop him boarding the plane." Alan told how the drunk passenger stumbled down the aircraft and, alarmingly, plonked himself down on the emergency exit aisle. He said some other passengers called a steward and said he shouldn't be sat there. This guy couldn't even put on his seatbelt. If you read the emergency exit conditions, a legal requirement, you've got to be mobile, not hammered, and in full control. Although I don't think it actually says that specifically in the thing. But the cabin crew weren't interested. They kept telling everyone, if it escalates, we will deal with it. So we went along with that. However, just 30 minutes into the flight, the sozzled passenger vomited all over himself and the aircraft. Alan said, "You can imagine the smell. I saw his bag open. He'd consumed 3/4 of a bottle of whiskey. The cabin crew left him covered in vomit for about 20 minutes. He was unable to deal with it himself. His friend was trying to sort him out. He then sat there spitting on the floor and hanging off the emergency exit door. His arms were all over it. Everyone was sat there thinking, what is going on here? Everyone was very frightened. Everyone with a 10-seat radius was well aware of the situation. It was absolutely awful. It was a nightmare. It made a 4.5-hour flight feel like 12 hours. Everyone was terrified." I won't go on. You get the gist.
It's another case of we need airlocks on aircraft.
What to dispose of them? Like,
Yeah.
right. I mean, Nev. I mean, what can we say?
How many times have we got to have this conversation about behaviour on flights?
I know.
Caused by drinking too much before they even get on the plane. I nearly said a bad word there.
Right, okay.
But, yes, it's got to stop, and it's got to stop at the check-in or before they get on the plane, isn't it? Simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some things that worry me a little bit in this story actually were the fact that apparently, it would appear he was very clearly very hammered from the outset as he was boarding the plane. I mean, I can't help but feel this maybe should have been dealt with at the gate.
It is incredibly concerning that he is sat in an exit row. That presents an incredible safety risk. Look at the story that we just talked about. Imagine if you had this gentleman there. Now that's just an extra thing that the cabin crew or the passengers surrounding him have to. It's another obstacle to getting out of that aircraft.
Yeah.
So that is incredibly concerning to me on Ryanair's part.
Yeah. Somebody's saying in the chat room here, actually, if you're on an emergency exit row, you must be capable and responsible for opening the door, which is very true, of course.
Yeah,
It's,
and booting said passenger.
Well,
out.
and during my more nervous phase of being being on a plane, I have actually been offered the row seat and declined it because I'm literally like I wouldn't know what to do in that situation, and then ended up, and then gone and sat somewhere else just because I know how important it is, if you see what I mean, as to what you're allowed to do.
Well, it'll happen again. We'll be covering a story
next
similar
week,
to this
probably,
next week. So, Nev, moving on.
It'll be Jet 2 next
It'll
week.
be Jet 2. We haven't had a Jet 2 one for a while now. Yeah. Nev, the next story is regarding a question I think you always ask yourself.
It is, and it's on the pointsguy.co.uk, and they've been taking a leaf out of the Flight Global website with an excellent font, so it's very easy to read. So that's a good thing. And the question is, which is better, British Airways Club Suite or first class? Well, there's been a huge amount of attention given to British Airways' new and much improved Club Suite, which debuted on its new Airbus A350 aircraft last week. BA also plans to install the new product on some of its Boeing 777s. While the Club Suite will be the highest and best class of service on BA's A350s, the 777s will also feature a slightly refurbished, smaller first class, which will be quite similar to the existing first class product. But with such an improved Club World product in Club Suite, which product will be better? First of all, the similarities between the products are substantial. Both feature a 1-to-1 layout, seating in a reverse herringbone layout. Ooh, matron. Meaning each seat angles into either the window or the centre of the plane. Direct aisle access, so no climbing over a neighbour to get to the aisle. That's my favourite bit, actually. Smaller, intimate cabin with dedicated crew, though the Club Suite cabin is significantly larger than the first cabin. The big X factor of the Club Suite product and the biggest benefit it has over first class is that each suite has a sliding door. This provides for more privacy than any other class on British Airways. So why would you pay more for first? Well, the difference is in the soft product. So that's the food, drinks and bedding service, which was upgraded this year. The website reached out to BA directly to ask about the specific differences, and they provided the following list. Speedier check-in and security at Heathrow T5, thanks to the new first wing versus fast track for club. 3-bag luggage allowance versus 2 in the club class. Concord room lounge access at Heathrow Airport with an a la carte menu, and spa treatments versus limited buffet in club. You get Temperley London loungewear, slippers and amenity bag with Elemis skincare products versus basic amenity kits in club. Meridian headphones versus basic noise cancelling headphones in club. Increased privacy because of a much smaller cabin. Dine on demand versus fixed meal times in club, and higher standard dining and fine wines with crockery, cutlery and glassware from William Edwards, Studio William and Dartington. a larger bed with a foam mattress and microfiber mattress topper and a 400 thread count bedding versus a basic flat bed with basic bedding in club. It's just like a Ryanair 737-800, isn't it, really? But of course, BA insists that all of these elements combine mean that the first experience is significantly better than the club experience, and therefore justifies the higher price tag, whether in cash or Avios. While BA does not currently have the best reputation in either class against the likes of Qatar and Cathay Pacific, the carrier continues to invest in its soft product to bring up the quality of that to other world-class carriers. And BA offers first on many long-haul routes, whilst the Club Suite will be slowly introduced on some routes, beginning with Madrid, then Dubai, Toronto, Bangalore, and others to follow. Ultimately, whether Club Suite or First is better is up to you and what you value most. But I still think that the leap to first class is a massive price hike. It's not just a little bit of an increase, it is huge.
Can we try for an upgrade in November, Nev, or do you think that'll be...
Let's see how we get on. Yep.
Okay.
I mean, for that kind of money, I mean, you'd like to be able to take home the 28,000 thread blanket or whatever. I mean, you and the cutlery and all that kind of thing that they're boasting about. Surely you should be allowed to take that home for that kind of money.
I mean, when you read that, when you look at how the products that Singapore and Emirates offer and Etihad, when you read this, it sounds like this is like something really incredibly amazing, but I've seen the suites and the first suites and stuff on Emirates and Etihad and that, and they are really, really high end,
right?
Okay. But I mean, the BA, or what I will say is the BA ones do look very crisp and kind of, business-like.
Okay, right.
I think.
Right, like as if they might be being used by business passengers, for example.
Well, you need to be to afford to buy a ticket. I've seen Never's show me the price of these first class tickets.
Okay,
yeah,
more than you earn in a year.
As Nev was reading that list, I was thinking to myself, well, I'll be able to compare the LMS skincare products before and after the flight as I board the airplane, turn right, and head to my seat at 43F.
That is true. Well, because you bought it in duty free rather than on the edge.
Yeah, I'll be able to see all those refreshed people leaving first class as I'm struggling with all the babies and the chickens and coach.
Just drop the PTUK name, Armando.
And then get kicked off the flight. No doubt. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, moving on.
Yes. Armando, the next story is one for you.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. Same story, different source. Grandfather took 33 of his family members on a trip to Hawaii using more than 1 million Southwest airline miles that he had racked up. Mr. Sam Pratt from Longwood, Florida, flew family members aged 2 to 72 over to Hawaii for the trip last week. The family used the trip to celebrate the fact that Pratt had entered remission in stage 3 blood cancer diagnosis, according to a press release from Southwest Airlines. When we heard the doctor say the words remission and that he would be able to live with us with this type of cancer, then he got cleared to fly, and we were just jumping up and down. Emily Peterson, Pratt's daughter, told My State Line, the news source, Pratt had miles through other trips and credit card points. During the vacation, the family also celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and even had a gender reveal party. Never in a million years did we think this would be possible. This is a dream. It truly, truly is, Pratt said. Southwest Airlines invited the Pratt family to be VIP guests at an event at Queen Surf Beach on August 10th as a thank you for being loyal customers to the brand. The event featured live music, games, free movie screening. Southwest Airlines spokesperson praised the company's rewards program, saying, "We've put a lot of heart into our rapid rewards program. Members enjoy flexibility, plenty of award seat availability, and places to travel to, and the best overall service to fit their travel needs. Those are the elements that our members value most," said Southwest Airlines.
Isn't that nice? Having the ability to do that for so many people, he must have really racked up the points.
Yeah, that's a lot of miles, isn't it?
That is a lot of miles.
good for Southwest Airlines for recognizing it and then taking it a step further and throwing them that party on the beach. So,
yeah, it's a good news story. It's a good news story for a change. So moving on to the next story, and this one is on the express.co.uk, one of Matt's favourite publications. This headline is EasyJet passenger shocked when he spots something very wrong with an aircraft seat. Now, we covered a story, you guys covered a story a few weeks ago about a seat back missing,
yes,
I think,
several,
didn't you?
In fact, I think it was 3, I think, were missing.
So this is a new one. So we're moving into different parts of the seat here. So an EasyJet passenger was amazed when he spotted an aircraft seat with no cushion on the flight. A photo rapidly going viral again on Twitter came just a week after a backless
so this is a
aircraft
separate
seat.
incident.
Oh yes.
Oh my god.
I know they're gradually removing this seat. You see, they're going through the motions.
Yeah.
So the passenger noticed this seat with no cushion on the bottom, and he said where the seat cushion should be, there was only a thin sheet of metal which could be seen. The back of the seat remained intact, unlike the one a few weeks ago. However, there was still a seat belt present. The man was about to sit down on the rather uncomfortable seat while a second showed him on the cushionless perch. The YouTuber captioned a pair of photos that he took, "Laugh out loud, check out this seat on my flight." However, he pointed out that no one was actually sat in the seat for the flight. Then he tweeted, "Just a heads up, no one sat in the seat next to us." He was laughing. So EasyJet explained that the seat cushion had been removed for cleaning and confirmed that no one had sat on it during the flight. An airline spokesperson told the Express the seat cushion was removed for cleaning. No passengers were permitted to fly in the seat, and it was inoperative during this time. Safety is our highest priority, as it always is with airlines, and EasyJet operates its fleet of aircraft in strict compliance with airline safety guidelines. Nevertheless, the photo attracted plenty of attention from Twitter users who shared their thoughts on the bottomless seat. And one of the comments saying, EasyJet coming in with those luxury seats. One person commented on another. He said that looks very comfortable. The unusual looking seat came just after a week after an EasyJet came under fire on social media for a backless seat. So you guys covered this a few weeks. I think that was last week or the week before on the show with these.
In fact, there's
the
a picture
seat.
now,
There it is. Yeah, the backless seat.
Yeah.
I mean,
so this is actually slightly different in the fact that it's the bottom cushion
seat
that's missing now.
Yeah.
I mean.
Neil Lamworn in the chat room says that's Captain Al's ventilated.
Good point. Yeah. That's more for the benefit of the passengers nearby, of course.
Now, as Express always does with their news stories, they've got one of these little questionnaire things on the website where you can click on and they ask a question and there's a simple yes and no answer. Now, they're asking on here, have you ever spotted a seat missing parts on a flight? Yes or no? And I'm going to click no because I've never seen. And let's have a look. Oh, yes, 80% of people have not seen an aircraft seat with missing parts. So
that was a risky strategy, wasn't it?
It's it's safe to say it's not a common occurrence.
No, and also, I mean, Nev, do you agree with me on this? This is a bit of a non-story, isn't it? Essentially, even the person who's posted it has gone to great lengths to say that nobody was sat in the seat during the flight.
But do you not think, though, in this situation with an airline like this, these aircraft are being used really heavily, doing multiple trips in a day, do you not think there's kind of like a storage area where there's some spare cushions that if one's covered in something, they can remove it, put a spare one back in its place? Wouldn't that make sense? No,
I don't know, Nev. That'd have to be maintenance that did that, wouldn't it?
Well, maybe, but I think this was a slow news day somehow. So they need to fill some column inches or centimeters with something, and that's what they've done. Yes,
yes, and didn't they do well with a photograph that they nicked from YouTube and everything?
Yeah,
yes,
I like that. So moving on to the next story, and Matt, this one is an ultra-long range story for you.
Goody, because we all know how much I love to be in the air. 1 Mile at a Time is the publication that we're reading this from, and the headline says, Airbus expected to unveil A350 1000 ULR, and I assume that the ULR stands for ultra-long range.
Yay!
Get me. I might actually know stuff by the, what, 10 years? Something like that?
What they can't see on the live feed is a big planner on the wall here with all the abbreviations
What they can't see
on.
is Carlos busy writing it down for me, like showing it up on cue cards. Anyway, we know that Airbus and Boeing are competing to build the world's longest range aircraft. Currently, the world's longest range aircraft is the A350-900 ULR. This plane is exclusively operated by Singapore Airlines on their routes from Singapore to Newark, Los Angeles and San Francisco, all to American locations, which is interesting. However, some airlines want more than the 9,500 plus mile range offered by that plane. For example, Qantas wants to launch non-stop flights from Melbourne and Sydney to London and New York, which is something they're referring to as Project Sunrise. Both Airbus and Boeing have been competing to try and build something to Qantas specifications, as presumably other airlines might be interested in this as well. The assumption is that Airbus would be building a modified version of the A350, while Boeing would be building a modified version of the 777X. In June, Airbus confirmed that they had built a plane that was capable of meeting Qantas's needs, though at the time they didn't provide more details of what that would look like. Well, while they still haven't officially confirmed anything, it's being reported that Airbus is preparing to launch the Airbus A350-1000 ULR, which presumably would be the plane they've been talking about. In other words, this plane would have the capacity of the A350-1000, which is bigger than the -900, while it would have even better range than the A350-900 ULR. Qantas's desired non-stop flights from Australia to London and New York would cover a distance of 9,950 miles to 10,573 miles. So they'd need to have a bit more range than the A350-900 ULR, especially if they're hoping for a denser configuration. Singapore Airlines A350-900 ULRs only have 161 seats, with business class and premium economy and no economy. Oh, wow, that's a comfy sounding plane. This also greatly limits the weight of the planes as well as fuel burn. So the bottom line, we'll have to wait for an official announcement from Airbus, though their concept of the A350-1000 ULR sure seems likely. Airbus had officially confirmed they've developed a plane capable of operating Qantas's desired flights non-stop, and as a concept, the A350-1000, not 9,000, ULR.
That's next year.
That's next year, is exactly what you'd expect. It'll be interesting to see if that's what Qantas goes with, or if Boeing has a contender as well. Regardless, it sure seems like Airbus is kicking Boeing's butt lately. That's partly due to Boeing's ongoing problems. I'm not even going to read the rest of that. But anyway,
it's good. It's good that they're having these ultra long range aircraft to obviously do these longer routes, so we can get to somewhere in one hit rather than 20 hits. But I think we can all agree that if they're going to make these aircraft fly for a lot longer and a lot further distance, to not squeeze 100 more seats in and leave the leave a decent seat pitch in economy for those of us who can't afford business or first. Wouldn't you agree, Armando?
I do agree. I was reading a separate article on a different website about the economic viability of the A350-1000 XLR or ULR, and I guess Airbus's biggest issue to overcome with this is the gross weight of the aircraft to make it economically viable with cargo and passengers and get the fuel needed on board. That's the biggest stumbling block that they need to get over.
Nev, any thoughts? Because I know obviously BA have got the 350 and they've got 17.5 inch pitch on their World Traveller.
Well, I think the thing is that the desire for ultra long range travel clearly is there, and with the A350 and the Dreamliner and the variants that they're offering now, this is going to be possible. Whether you would want to do a slog from Melbourne or Sydney to London in economy, I don't know, but yeah, when the two times I've been to Australia, I've actually quite liked the couple of days layover that I had in Singapore, just to recharge the battery slightly. But of course, both the 787 and the 350 have the lower cabin altitude. So I think it'll be interesting to see what condition people arrive in at the other end, even in the cheap seats. So we shall see.
Yeah.
And if anyone's listening from Qantas and they want us to trial the flight,
Yeah,
obviously
I'm all right, thanks.
Matt's not bothered.
I'll sit this one out. It's fine.
He'll go on the wing.
Right,
but
will he?
yeah,
Okay.
me, Armando, and Nev would love to try. The
We could, for the purposes of research and podcasting, we can meet in the middle, and you guys go from London. I'll start in JFK, and we all meet in Sydney.
Bad idea. Bad idea.
Well, there we are. That's lovely. Excellent. Right. Maybe another plea for Patreon donators.
Yeah,
Perhaps,
yeah. So, Nev, moving on. The next story is a special one I chose just for you because it is incredibly tech orientated.
It is. It's on the ttgmedia.com website, which has the most huge amount of advertising I've ever seen on any website. So I don't want to click anywhere because I'm going to go off to some sort of weird advertising portal if I'm not careful. But this is all about BA trialing onboard virtual reality headsets. And BA has begun trialling these onboard VR headsets in a bid to offer passengers their own 3D cinema in the skies. From now until the end of 2019, customers travelling on selected flights from Heathrow to New York's JFK in first class will be able to view films, documentaries and travel programs in 2D, 3D or 360-degree formats. The headsets allow customers to fully immerse themselves in 3D, regardless of the position that they are sitting in, and even works when lying fully flat. Now, can I just say straight away, I think there's going to be some problems there, but we'll come back to that in a second. But Saida Ismail, who's BA's head of in-flight product, said, "We're always looking at the latest technology to enhance our customers' experience on the ground and in the air. Virtual reality has the power to revolutionize in-flight entertainment, and we are really excited to trial these new glasses as they should create a unique and memorable journey for our customers." Well, there is no doubt about that whatsoever. And if you suffer from motion sickness at all, and if there's a little bit of turbulence going on, that's going to mess with your inner ear and the balance like you wouldn't believe. But we'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, this is certainly a new experience, but only available in first class on those selected flights.
That's a shame. That's a shame.
Well, I did throw up my hands when you said, it's in first class. I said, well, I guess I'll never be able to see this. But I have a proposition, which is put 360-degree cameras on the tail and on the belly, and then pipe that to your 3D glasses.
Ooh,
and then that would be awesome.
That would be
I would
awesome.
like that.
Yeah,
That's a really good
We need to
idea.
tell them about that one.
Yeah, we do, yeah.
And I really sincerely hope that on their list of films that they're going to allow people to watch in 3D on said VR
It's got to be
headsets.
Top Gun, surely.
Top Gun 3D.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's got to
Yeah.
be in there.
Yeah, as long as it's not Airplane, is it? As long as they don't put that on the blooming box set or
Air Crash Investigation
no,
in 3D.
No, in 3D.
Oh, it's good. It's good. The actual system that must run this must be one hell of a warm running system, I'd expect, Nev. All the processors and stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I have to see how it goes. Yeah.
Actually, Connor's just said in the chat room here, he's just saying, yeah, but if you fall asleep and woke up, would you like literally wet yourself? Because it's like you wake up and suddenly you think you're outside the aircraft.
Oh yeah, just a bit.
Good point. Good point. Well made. Yeah.
Armando, we've got a nice little story for you now regarding a UK-based airline.
Yeah, I feel like this is my penance for saying last week that I'm biased towards Boeing. I've gotten all the Airbus stories today.
It's your punishment. Yeah.
Yeah. So, simpleflying.com, Virgin Atlantic has the keys to its new ride and is gassing up the tanks, ready for its first mission. With inaugural service earmarked for less than a month's time, here's what you need to know about getting on board that very special first flight. If you're as excited as we are to get a close-up look at Virgin Atlantic's shiny new A350-1000, you haven't got long to wait. First services are set to launch in under 4 weeks' time, with the carrier operating the new bird on the flagship London to New York routes. Gulf Victor Lima Uniform X-Ray, otherwise known as Red Velvet, arrived at Gatwick Airport last weekend. Some were confused as to why it went to Gatwick when the inaugural flight will be from Heathrow. The likelihood is that it's a lot easier for Virgin to have it close to their headquarters in Crawley than on the other side of London. And of course, they needed to apply that all-important new Virgin icon to the side of the airplane. Nevertheless, the initial flight will be from Heathrow, so if you're really lucky, you might get to see it in the skies over London prior to its first flight as it ferries from one airport to the other. The very first flight is scheduled for September 10th, 2019. The flight, Virgin 153, will leave Heathrow at 13:30, arriving in New York's JFK at 16:25. Following a leisurely 2.5-hour turnaround, the aircraft will be ready to take off again at 1900, arriving back at Heathrow the following day at 7:20 in the morning. Now, we do have podcast royalty Captain Nick in the chat room, and I would love to hear his take on this and if he's excited on it.
Well, it just so happens we've got him here. Nick, how are you, Nick? Oh, I'm all right.
That is quite possibly the most offensive. Wow, dear Captain, dear Captain. On behalf of Plain Talking UK, I would like to distance myself from the appalling.
I need a beard.
I don't know. From all of us here in North Carolina, that sounded pretty good.
Right. Okay. Oh dear. Sorry.
Nev disappeared. No, it's nice. And I've always said that the Virgin Atlantic's livery looks awesome. I really do love that colour that they have on that red colour they have on their aircraft. It is awesome.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a couple weeks ago we were showcasing their interior that they've designed for this aircraft, and it looks gorgeous. I'd be
uniforms that go with it as well, isn't there? There's a whole sort of rebrand almost that's sort of wrapped up in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to get a flight on this aircraft.
So the next story is on that awesome site again, the sun.co.uk. And a bit of drama, this one. This is the headline, Plane Drama. Norwegian Air passenger aircraft damaged after crashing into fence at Gatwick Airport. So there's a little video of this as well, but a 787 Dreamliner has been damaged after crashing into a fence at Gatwick Airport this week. Passengers were left shocked when the Norwegian aircraft was pushed back and into the noise mitigation barrier, with emergency services rushing to the scene. One passenger took to Twitter, writing that the tug pushes Norwegian 787 back in too far and hits part of Gatwick Airport perimeter fence. Fire crews on precautionary standby at the time were obviously on standby. A photograph which shows fire crews on the tarmac as well was posted on social media. A Norwegian spokesperson said that we can confirm that one of our aircraft sustained some damage upon pushback on today's flight. They said this was flight D17017 from London Gatwick to New York's JFK. All passengers disembarked the aircraft as normal and were being assisted by ground staff in the terminal. They said, as always, safety, well-being of passengers is top priority, and they were making arrangements to put the passengers on a replacement aircraft that departed later that afternoon. They apologise also to the customers and passengers on aircraft for the inconvenience. But this is not the first time we've had one of these happen, have we, on the news, with aircraft being pushed back into either other aircraft or other aircraft or walls. It says here that most of the pieces fell around the area, and there's another story here. 300. It's another airline story on here, which is tagged onto the bottom of this one. I don't know why they've tagged it on there. It's the Sun, to be fair.
It's the Sun newspaper. I mean, but that's where Nev goes for all of his aviation-related content. Obviously,
I don't understand. How there continue to be these types of ground handling incidents. I mean, we talk about it so much. Every couple weeks we do a story about this where airplanes are crashing into each other. It's just carelessness on the part of the ground personnel. And for someone who works daily around aircraft and moving aircraft, I just don't understand it. Take your time is all it is.
some things obviously either pilots are distracted, or something has obviously gone awry, or that just as you say, really in a scenario like that with so many people around and all that, really stuff like this shouldn't happen, should it? I mean, it shouldn't be.
No, and it's a seemingly innocent accident, but I mean, this is going to cost the airline
big time,
tens of thousands of dollars, right? So it may have only scratched the airplane or broken off a static discharge, wick or something like that. But all those passengers have to deplane. They have to rebook them. The airplane is out of service. The baggage, the cargo. And then the time that it takes, that crew may time out by the time they get a replacement aircraft. I hope, and over in, well, I think more and more here in the U.S. too, but these third-party ground handling companies, where it's not part of the airline. I only hope that.
Bless you, Megan, by the way.
The sneeze heard round the world.
Do you not think, Armando, as well, that the airports around not just in the UK, but airports in general, major airports are getting more and more congested. There's more, going on.
Yeah, certainly that is a factor. And as they try to pack more aircraft in there, and so Meg and I were just in Chicago, and we spent, I don't know, probably 6 hours waiting on a layover, and they had the designs for the future Chicago Terminal 3, I think it was. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, they're just continuing to pack more gates, more airplanes, getting it more crowded in there. And there are regulations that govern all of this, but the flip side of that is the ground personnel need to be trained to that level too. So you can't just get minimum wage personnel and move a $50 million airplane.
Yeah, it's a bit more expensive than dinging a car. At the end of the day.
Yes, just slightly.
Slightly.
Yeah.
So the next story, Matt, for you is I quite like this one actually.
There's another quality publication here in the UK. It's the Mirror. Everyone, we've gone from one red top to another, and the headline is: "Delighted passenger gets own private jet after finding flight is completely empty." A man was delighted to discover that he was the only passenger travelling on his flight, allowing him to experience what it's like to fly in his own private jet. Only, let's be honest, not really. Vincent Pioni, noticed things were quieter than normal when he arrived at the airport for his 7 p.m. Delta journey from Aspen, Colorado to JFK Airport in New York. Earlier, he was disappointed to learn that the first leg of his flight to Salt Lake City in Utah had been rescheduled for a later takeoff time. But that disappointment soon turned to elation when employees told him that he would be enjoying the entire cabin to himself without the threat of having to share armrests. I mean, one would like to think perhaps they sort of shoved him into business class and sort of, treated him. But anyway, Vincent Pioni, a filmmaker from New York City, documented the entire journey on camera and posted the results to social media. The video shows how Delta check-in staff played along with the joke, asking, will the only passenger on board this flight please board at this time? The 35-year-old says it was the first time that he'd ever flown on a solo flight. He said, I didn't know that it was that I was the only person on the flight, so I arrived at the airport, which is a very tiny airport, and at the desk they were like, I don't know if we even need to make the announcement because it's just you. Yes, I mean, it'd be a very intimate safety briefing, wouldn't it? I mean, it's just like anyway, you get the gist of the story. I was like, oh no, do the announcement. Obviously, everyone really enjoyed playing along. He watched on as airport staff loaded the plane with sandbags to add extra weight to make up for the lack of passengers. I mean,
I love this next bit on the story there.
Yeah, okay, so Vincent also received his own personal greeting from the flight attendant, who cheekily asked that he stay in his allocated seat as his flight was about to take off. At one stage, he is even allowed to enter the cockpit and shake the hands of the pilots, allowing him to live out his own childhood dream of getting inside the cockpit. Now, hang on a minute. What, while they were in the air?
No,
I was going to say, right, okay.
It's on the ground.
Well, that's nothing unusual. You do that all the blooming time. I mean, you're poor wife. Anyway, the final scene of the video cuts to a triumphant Vincent standing on the doorway of the jet as he holds a drink in one hand. Anyway, yes, you get the idea.
Do you know, I can only hope, Nev, that this happens with me and you in November.
Yeah,
and
right.
Would that or not be awesome?
It would be, but the chance of that, I don't. Well, we'll
Zero.
see.
Yeah,
You never know,
yeah.
do you?
You never truly know. Have you ever sort of been in a similar situation, Armando?
No, I haven't. I wish.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a couple of stories like that. So, I mean, now, I mean, obviously, I'm sorry to be boring here, but presumably they needed that aircraft in New York. I mean, I can't think of any other scenario where one passenger would essentially be taken. Like, they must have been needing to reposition it anyway. That's the only thing I can think of, because I mean, I can't think of it, like deadheading back to.
It does say at the bottom of the story, actually, that he said that during an interview with the Washington Post, he revealed that Delta staff told him that the cost of flying him to Salt Lake City would have cost somewhere in the region of between $30,000, which is around about 24,000 sterling, UK pounds.
Oh no, I have breaking news.
Oh,
Chris Griggs is correct. Delta has responded. Delta says passenger who posted viral video of private jet experience boarded flight that never took off.
Oh,
really?
Delta Airlines said Wednesday that a passenger who posted viral video purportedly showing him lucking into a private jet experience was the only passenger who never lifted off. It did push back from the gate, but shortly returned due to a maintenance issue.
Oh,
no!
The aircraft departed a short time later without any customers on board.
Was it a Mad Dog? No.
It was a Bombardier regional jet.
Okay.
Oh, no, Chris!
No.
Middle of the show.
Chris,
If I could high five you, Chris, I would.
I mean, it's just as well he's a Patreon donator, isn't it? Because it's like, he's basically ruined the last 4 minutes of the show. I mean, honestly.
Free mug for Chris Griggs.
Yes, I think so. Yes. Leave that with me.
Excellent.
Chris, send us an email. We'll send a mug off to you, I think. Yes, never mind.
Anyway,
right.
So,
well, I feel a bit deflated now.
I know.
Whose go is it? I don't care
Nev.
anymore. Oh yeah.
Nev, Nev, what's happening on this next story, Nev?
Well, it's on the Daily Mail, of course.
Oh, for goodness sake. Have you run out of quality publications this week, Carlos?
However, I'm pleased to say this is talking about someone that I interviewed a couple of years ago. And it was a very, very interesting interview as well. And I'll read you the story and I'll tell you all about it. It's all about the ability to fly on a private jet for less than the cost of a trip with Ryanair. If you thought you needed to be incredibly wealthy to afford a trip in a private jet, you would be wrong. Luxury travel experts have revealed that you can actually fly in one for less than the price of a Ryanair flight. Michelle Robson, editor of flight tip site Turning Left for Less, and her deputy editor, Paul Kosler, snagged a trip on a private jet for just £250 each, exclaiming that they felt like celebrities. Paul shored up the validity of the comparison with Ryanair fares on his write-up of the trip by posting a screen grab of the Ryanair flight from London to Palma on August the 22nd that costs £269 per person. Their swanky flight was between Luxembourg and Dusseldorf on board a Citation CJ4 and came courtesy of Harnair, which says, Michelle, it's a slightly different type of private jet operator because it offers regular scheduled flights. And there's some nice pictures of them on the flight there. Michelle and Paul's tickets granted them access to the business class lounge at Luxembourg Airport, which apparently wasn't terribly impressive, but it did offer them views of their private jet on the tarmac. Describing the journey on it to Mail Online Travel, Michelle, whose site offers advice on how to get champagne travel on a Prosecco budget, said, when we arrived at the jet, we were all instantly in love with the experience already. We felt like celebrities as the pilots personally welcomed us on board the sleek aircraft. We are lucky enough to fly business and first class regularly using our luxury for less tips. Traveling on the jet, however, was something else. It felt like we had only ever been on a bus and we were now traveling in a Porsche. The takeoff experience was stunning. With an open cockpit, we could see the same view as the pilots. We soared into the sky at an amazingly steep rate of climb. Once at cruising altitude, we could have a drink or snack, or even more importantly, for an aviation buff, have a look at the cockpit and chat to the pilots. This would never normally be allowed on larger aircraft due to security. All too soon, the experience was over and we were landing in Dusseldorf. The trip, which they just did for the experience, was organised with the help of ITA Matrix, which is the search engine that powers Google Flights, and the private jet was booked using Expedia. BA offers flights to Luxembourg from London Heathrow and from Dusseldorf back to Heathrow from £118 return, though Michelle and Paul both used Avios points to pay for their BA flights. Well, that's a nice story, but actually more importantly for me is how well Michelle and Paul have done with their website. When I first interviewed Michelle, it was quite an early stage of the development of what they were doing. Now there's just so much information that they put out. It's fantastic. So I'm very pleased to be able to plug it for them. So if you do a search for Turning Left for Less, then you'll see all about Michelle and Paul's travels around the globe.
We need to try this. I want to have a go at it. Because we went on the business jet, didn't we, at Farnborough last year. We went on board, didn't we? And it'd be nice to be in one when it's flying. To have go. So if anyone's listening and has a business jet and would like to offer the P2UK team a flight, just drop us a line. Usual.
Well, I'm not sure of the legalities. Here in the U.S., we have two operating procedures, I guess, operating regulations. We have the FAA Part 135, which is an on-demand carrier, and Part 91 Subpart K, which is a fractional ownership opportunities. And there's different regulations and minimums and aircraft certification criteria for each one, and pilot certification criteria. And I'm always amazed that there's not a company, well, there may be, that manages these empty legs. So when an aircraft has to go from, let's say, Charlotte to Little Rock, Arkansas, to pick up a passenger, well, that's an empty leg. Why don't they, at least do something like this and sell that off for $200-300 at least to recoup some cost and give somebody the opportunity to do something like this? But I don't know. I personally don't know of anything like that. But what a great opportunity that would be, huh?
Absolutely. Guys, I should just apologise for those watching. We are having a few bandwidth issues here in the studio this evening. It is unfortunately something that's slightly beyond our control, so please just bear with us. But as I say, unfortunately very little we can do at the moment. For some reason we've got a few issues with our networks here today.
So the next story, or the last story in the commercial news segment this week, falls with you, Armando, and it's worrying news for anyone who's wanting to have a kind of reasonably priced transatlantic flight.
Yeah, Norwegian Air has just stated that it's ending its transatlantic service between Ireland and 3 U.S. and Canadian airports because of the grounding of the Boeing 737 MAX aircraft, and that makes the routes no longer commercially viable. The Oslo-based carrier announced Tuesday its last flights from Ireland to Stewart Airport in New York's Hudson Valley, TF Green Airport in Providence, Rhode Island, would be September 14, and its last flight to Ireland from Hamilton, Ontario, will depart on September 13th. The airline says the decision reflects uncertainty about when or whether the troubled Boeing 737 MAX will return to the air. Norwegian bought the 737 MAX specifically to support service between Europe and smaller airports across the Atlantic. So there you go. That's,
and could I just jump in there to say how well they've done by showing a picture of a 787 in the article.
Oh no, really? Oh, hang on, I'm just popping that up now. There we are. So, right. Well, didn't they do well? Look.
Yeah,
it does say that the file photo shows a Boeing 787 being built for Norwegian Air Shuttle at Boeing's assembly facility in Everett. Great. Well, why talk about that to then show a picture of?
Also, I think when I was following this story, actually when it was sort of going out live, I do seem to recall. I think there was a tweet that had been put very cheekily by Aer Lingus underneath it. Where they'd sort of said, literally, it just had underneath, under the bottom, the phrase like "cough, cough," as if to say, like, we're still doing it, guys. Because and of course, Aer Lingus do, don't they? They fly to similar locations in the States, from Dublin and Shannon and all sorts.
It's a shame actually that they've stopped doing this. I think Armando, you've flown with Norwegian, haven't you?
I loved Norwegian.
Yeah.
Both Megan and I have used Norwegian, and I really, really was a big fan. I was on a Dreamliner every time that I used them, actually, and it was from Gatwick to a couple different destinations. I think I flew to New York and then Gatwick to Oakland, California, and that was a fantastic flight, despite it being 11 and a half hours or something like that. So I am sorry. Don't mean to speak about them in the past tense.
Not yet. Anyway, yeah.
I am a huge fan of Norwegian Air, and I really truly just wish them the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll still see them flying the 737s, well, the 800 series in the skies over us for quite some time.
Well, let's hope so. But essentially, in the story, they're citing the fact that they're waiting on the Max still. Then, presumably.
Yeah, it's knock-on effects, I think, with this Max kind of thing.
So they're not saying
deliberately
so much.
chose not to put any stories in this week for that for the Max, but
right,
yeah.
okay. Somehow it's wheedled its way in there twice. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
Anyway, so moving swiftly on, that is where we bring the commercial news stories to a close this week. But we have got some military news coming up in a bit. But first, Matt, cast your mind back a few weeks back to when I was busy working my day job.
No, when you say that, you have to say, when I was busy.
When I was allowed a day's grace by my boss, Stuart, to go and visit a certain Aerospace Bristol museum in Bristol while I was there working. And I got the chance to have a good look around the museum and meet all the people there who were fantastic, I will say again. And I got to interview a chap there and talk about how the museum works. So here it is. So it's Carlos here, and I'm at Aerospace Bristol, taking some time out of my busy work schedule to come and spend a few hours here at the museum. And I'm here with Oliver. Oliver, what's your role here at the museum?
So I started off as a host, working on the floor, and now I'm a supervisor here and in charge of tours and talks at Aerospace Bristol. Excellent.
And the museum itself, Aerospace Bristol, I'm guessing it's quite a busy museum to run?
Yes, well, we're relatively new. Our first year we exceeded our expectations. I had 160,000. We predicted 110, so it's going really well, and we have lots of things going on. It's fun.
So tell us, Oliver, a bit about what you've got here at the museum for people to come and see.
Unlike some other aviation museums, we're very much focused on our story, which is the Bristol aviation story. So aerospace in Bristol, starting in 1910 with the British and Colonial Aeroplane Company, and continuing to the present day with BAE Systems and Rolls-Royce and Airbus, etc. Many companies here, so it's still a very important site.
And you've also got quite an iconic aircraft not far from where we are here on display as well, haven't you, Concorde?
Yes, possibly one of the most iconic aircrafts, and ours is the last to fly, last to be built, but all the British ones, as I'm sure many of your listeners know, were all built here in Filton.
So you've got quite a good past here in the area that we are with the museum.
Yeah, it's it's one of the most important aviation sites historically and still to this day in the world. And we're very proud to have Concorde, and some of the volunteers who work here actually helped build her, all the engines, so we've got a wealth of knowledge here.
So, but some of the other aircraft you've got on display, I mean, we're standing on quite another prominent British-built aircraft here.
Yeah, we're on Britannia here. This is the second ever prototype. We've only got the front section because it was turned into a trainer after it crashed in the Severn Estuary due to catastrophic engine failure. With a Dutch KLM executive on board at the time who was looking at buying them, KLM never bought a Britannia. So
it's a lovely aircraft. I think there's one of these, I think at Duxford.
There is indeed, yeah. Static display outside, I believe. I've been on it, yeah. It's nice to see it fully intact, but we're quite pleased with our one as well.
So just walking around the museum myself, and you've got the display you've got on here is, I have to say, it's really good. You know, some of the exhibits you've got on here are fantastic to look at. Some of the old displays of the wooden, original, old 1900 style aircraft, and that. How did you come across a lot of these bits and pieces that you've got here?
So I presume you're referring to our Bristol Scout and our Bristol F2B Fighter. They're actually both replicas, as many biplanes you see now in museums are, because unfortunately they don't stand the test of time, although I am pleased to say we will be restoring an original Bristol Fighter in the future, which we acquired from America. So that will be nice to have an original one, but it's still nice to have the replicas. They're beautiful machines, they're all built to flying spec as well.
The Concorde you've got here, as you said, it's the last one that was built. Just how hard is it to kind of to look after the aircraft here at the museum?
It's largely looked after by, it's still owned by British Airways, as all the British Concords are, so we have to always check with them what we're doing with it. So we have recently this year reactivated its lowerable nose, or droop snoot, as I quite like saying. And then we've been, so we had to clear that with BA, but we're going to be displaying that on odd occasions, sort of high days and holidays. So if you're ever visiting, check our What's On page, and you might want to swap your days and come when we're lowering the nose.
So what's some of the other aircraft you've got here on display, Oliver, in the building?
So, we're a new museum, we opened in 2017, so this is what we've currently got is the beginning of our collection, and everything is in some way related to Bristol, be it either the engines or the aircraft themselves. But one of, I think, the most special is our twin-rotor Type 173 helicopter, which was the first twin-engined, twin-rotor helicopter ever built in the world. Obviously now the RAF use Chinooks, but initially they used the Bristol Belvedere, which was developed from the Type 173. And
also, you've got a couple of fuselage sections as well from an aircraft I think a lot of our listeners will know, especially ones in the UK, the BAE 146.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's of course the Royal plane that the RAF use. Yeah, and it's quite nice to have the cut-throughs. It's lovely to have whole aircraft, but sometimes it's nice to see how it's actually built and how very thin the fuselage is, which does shock a lot of our visitors, but we reassure them that this is standard and it's perfectly safe. It's all about saving weight, fuel efficiency, and I do always say compare it to Concorde though, because it had a much thicker fuselage due to the altitude it flew and the supersonic heating it was subjected to.
I think for me as a passenger, and I know I've taken some pictures as well on the way around here as well, like you said, to have that cut-through section of fuselage gives quite a good, a view of exactly how an airliner looks in that kind of way. And it's good that you guys have got that here to enable that to people to see, just what goes on below the seats as such when you're sitting on the aircraft.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and some of our other things. Another one that surprises people is the Airbus A319 wing, which is a cut-through as well. And you can actually manipulate that and deploy it into its different flight characteristics, which even some pilots come who obviously operate them, or maybe not that particular type, but operate these things regularly. They're quite surprised to see it up close and personal, because normally you're miles away at the front of the cockpit and you don't see the cut-through either. So we'll hopefully appeal to people who have no interest in aviation or aerospace or engineering, through to people who are heavily involved but still learn something and see something a bit different, which I think we're managing to achieve, but hopefully in the future we'll get even better.
So have you got any plans for the future? Are there any aircraft, can you tell us any aircraft that you're hoping to get here in the museum, perhaps in the future?
So we have a reserve collection which is currently stored in Bristol in the Brabazon hangars, or the aircraft assembly hall, where Brabazon was initially built and then Concorde later on, and many other iconic aircraft passed through there. So we will be adding to our collection. Next year we're hoping to open a restoration hangar, which is in a World War I hangar. So we've got 4 hangars on this site, only 2 are currently open. So next year we'll be bringing in the Bristol Freighter, which we shipped over from New Zealand. We've got a Bolingbroke from Canada, which will be actively restored as well as the Bristol Fighter, which I mentioned earlier. So I can't give any more away, but those are 3 iconic aircraft from very different eras that did very different things, but and they're all Bristol.
And for the military people who listen to the show, because we do have some people who love the military grey stuff, as Captain Al would call them, you've also got a Harrier here as well, haven't you, on display?
Yes, in our sort of Cold War section, we've got a Harrier, plus lots of missiles and a Chevrolet nuclear warhead. But the Harrier's connection to Bristol is the engine, which Sir Stanley Hooker designed. He was obviously a Rolls-Royce man initially, then he came to Bristol to modernise the engine department, Bristol Engines, and then Rolls-Royce saw that as a threat, so they bought the entire engine department in 1966, I think.
Yeah, it's good to see the Harrier and stuff here, because obviously we don't have those in the UK anymore, although they are still being used in the Spanish Air Force, I think, still the Harriers, which we sold to them. So moving on then to the actual kind of outlook around the site and stuff. You've got Airbus literally on your front door, one of the factories here. Do you have do you have good ties between you guys and Airbus and the museum?
Yes, they were one of our big sponsors, as was many other companies, Rolls-Royce, GK, and etc. Yes, and they're often here having conferences and events, so we work closely with them, and very pleased to as well, as they help us with Concorde as well.
And you've also got an A320 sim I saw just a minute ago.
Yes, A320 sim, not open to the public yet, but you may have seen some volunteers in there working. We're hoping.
I saw the Windows screen on the display.
Yeah, I think they're just updating some software, but yes, that's something we're hoping at some point in the future to be able to open to the public as an extra cost, but it won't be excessive.
Is that donated to the museum?
Yes, that was donated by, I can't remember their name now, Jet something.
I think it was like a sim company, I think it was, if I remember rightly, on the advert, Jetway or Jet Air.
Something.
Well, it's I'll put the links in the show notes anyway for that. But Oliver, so what are your plans for the future for yourself within the museum?
I'm an aviation nut, engineering nut as well, transport in general, but I'm very, very pleased to have started working here just before we opened, and very proud to be able to contribute at a higher level now, but it's a great place to work, and not just the volunteers, but the staff, really good fun, and everyone's passionate and enjoys it. And some people work here and have no interest in aviation, and before you know it, they're very, very interested.
So a bit about yourself, Oliver. What your aviation passion background, kind of where does that stem from?
Well, I was born in Newmarket and grew up next to Mildenhall in a tiny village. But from there, back in the day, I could cycle into the Mildenhall Air Show. 50% of the people on my close were in the US Air Force, so always been heavily immersed in it, and I got free air shows daily. I just look up and watch all sorts of amazing things. I saw Concorde there back in the day, and Blackbird, and Ospreys nowadays chopping overhead with they're very noisy, but they're impressive machines. But it took a lot of money for them to build them. We did it with Harrier first.
Yeah, exactly. And the Ospreys, it is awesome. I'm very lucky enough to go on board one of those a few months back. But so, what else? Are you more of a military side, or do you prefer the commercial stuff?
Well, both, honestly. But initially, when I was younger, it used to be military. In fact, I have to still ration how much military books I read. Otherwise, that and sci-fi. I probably wouldn't read anything else. But I'm interested in most things to some extent, but particularly engineering, aviation, transport, history, war, social history. Yeah, pretty much everything.
Any commercial airliners stand out for you that you've flown on that, because we always have this big divide on the show where we have the Airbus half and the Boeing half of the listeners, and there's always a big divide between dare you say what your poison is? I'm
afraid I'm going to have to go Airbus because of our connection, but Boeing is an iconic company as well. But Airbus is very much close to Bristol, and the more I learn about them, the more impressive they are.
Now, one of the questions, Oliver, before we wrap up, is we always ask this question to pilots and people we interview within the industry in the aviation network, and it's a kind of put you on the spot question, but it's easy, don't panic. So, given the chance to fly any aircraft, military, commercial, be it retired or still in working, still flying in commercial service or military service, what would you love to have a go at flying?
So I've got to pick just one.
Just one. Or we'll let you pick two.
Okay, Spitfire and Concorde.
That was quick. That's obviously you know what you like.
Very much, but given the chance, fly on everything, why not?
So you don't fancy the trip on the Spitfire, flying the Spitfire out? I think they have one at Goodwood.
I actually know. I used to know the Grace Spitfire.
Oh, yeah.
Family, so I don't get any. I can't jump the queue, unfortunately, and it still is expensive. But one day, hopefully, I'll get to fly in one of the Grace Spitfires.
Excellent. Well, great choice in aircraft, Oliver. And it's been great to speak to you today, and thank you for taking time out of your day to come and chat to the listeners and chat to me today here at Aerospace Bristol. It's been great to talk to you. And all the best for the future with the museum. And just before you go, for the benefit of the listeners and those who may be in the UK who want to come and visit the museum, where can they find out more about Aerospace Bristol?
So we're on all the social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc., or our website, aerospacebristol.org.
Excellent. Thanks, Oliver, for your time. Take care.
Thank you very much.
That was awesome. I really thoroughly enjoyed my day there.
So what was the highlight for you then?
Well, I don't know. The highlight, I think, was how friendly the staff were there. They were really good, and were pretty much, talking to me most of the day while I was there. The various staff members who were looking after the various aircraft were very informative, and they're all volunteers as well, which is another really good thing. But the museum is really well laid out. It's just got so much to see, and also they've got a really good restaurant there as well. Just point that out.
Wow, we did really well there. It's
I know.
It's not bad. Like 4 minutes in, and he's mentioned food.
But no, it's good to speak to Oliver. He was really good. He took some time out of his day because they are quite busy there because the museum is fairly fresh and new. They're still doing a lot of things there. But if you're in the Bristol area in the UK and you want to have sort of take a bit of time out of your day to go and visit, you need to take yourselves over there and have a look around because it's well worth the entrance fee. Yeah. So there we go. So we're going to hand things over next to our military aviation expert, Armando.
Yeah, that's right, guys. We've got some military stories to wrap up the show. If you're ready, Nev.
Yes, I am.
Carlos, are you ready?
Oh, covered in grey bits.
And
I'm
the man
sorry.
pushing
It's just like, cuffs match the collar.
It's being married.
Sorry.
It's being married.
All right. So our first story was actually sent in by a new listener to the show, Mr. Logan Lynch. This is from the today.com website. And it goes, Brian Knight was just 5 years old when he saw his dad alive for the last time. His father, Colonel Roy Knight Jr., was an Air Force pilot who fought during the Vietnam War. In 1967, Knight said goodbye to his family at Dallas Love Field Airport. Later that year, he was shot down in Laos. He was declared killed in action in 1974 after search efforts failed to find him. Then, earlier this year, Knight's remains were at last discovered and identified. And in a touching tribute, Brian Knight himself brought them home. Now, a pilot for Southwest Airlines, Brian flew his father's remains back to Texas, to the same airport where they had said goodbye more than 50 years ago. We had pretty much given up any hope that this would ever happen, Brian's brother, Roy Knight III, said to Today. We're absolutely amazed how this came to pass. Roy Knight served in the Air Force for more than 20 years at bases in Asia and in the U.S., and his wife, Patricia, raised 3 children, Roy, Gayan, and Brian, the youngest. Bringing his remains home after so many years was an emotional experience for everyone. The airport fell silent, and airport workers stood at attention as the colonel's family received his flag-draped casket on the tarmac. For Roy, the colonel's oldest son, it was a bittersweet moment of closure. It was beautiful, it was emotional, it was sad, but it was good too. It was like the end of a journey. This is a great story, and this is a sort of a little known corner of the Department of Defense. There is still an agency called the Defense Prisoner of War Missing in Action Accounting Agency, who to this day, since the Vietnam conflict, continues to work in that region to repatriate the remains of missing personnel. And they are, it's a joint organization that continues to be funded despite any changes in government. And as of last count from June of this year, the original missing in the Vietnam conflict was 2,646. To this day, 1,058 have been repatriated and identified, leaving 1,588 personnel unaccounted for. So these personnel go out there, they interview villagers, they have linguists, they have logisticians, they have communication specialists, they have forensic scientists that go out there, and they will go out to either known or suspected crash sites or sites where they can recover, if nothing else, a piece of an aircraft that they knew that person was flying, but even better to recover any remains. So that's we have a saying that says we never leave a man behind, and that is true to this day from the Vietnam conflict so many years later.
That's
Very nice story.
It's an incredible story, isn't it? And well done to everybody involved. There's
actually a video on Southwest have got a YouTube page, and they've actually got a video that covers this story as well on there. I don't know if you've watched that, Armando. And it's a really good video, and I did watch it the other day, and definitely brought a tear to my eye, I'm not going to lie.
Yes, so thank you to Logan for sending that story in, obviously, very much appreciated and very beautiful too.
So next story is on the military.com website, and the headline, majority of C-130s return to service following wing crack inspections. So the US Air Force has given the okay for a majority of its C-130 Hercules fleet to fly again, after about a quarter of its cargo aircraft were grounded last week for precautionary inspections. As of August the 12th, good date that, 88 aircraft have been inspected and 87 returned to service, Air Mobility Command spokeswoman Rose Riley told military.com on Tuesday. One aircraft was identified with a crack, and appropriate measures were being taken to address it and repair it, Riley said in an email. Tremendous progress is being made to inspect all remaining affected aircraft, and we continue to safely support operations around the world, she added. Last week, General Marianne Miller, head of the Army Marine Corps, ordered 123 of the 450 C-130 models on Air Force flight lines to be stood down as a safety precaution after atypical cracks were discovered on the lower centre wing joints, also known as the rainbow fitting, according to a service news release. The order applies to the C-130H and J model aircraft that have not received the extended service life centre wing box and have greater than 15,000 equivalent flight hours, officials said at the time. Those aircraft began an immediate time compliance technical order, or TCTO, inspection to identify and correct any cracking to ensure airworthiness of these C-130 aircraft, they said. Rainbow fittings provide structural support within the wings. Over the last few years, fatigue cracks have been common in the wing centre structure. There were 96 H and 36 J variants impacted. Of those, 123 were on the flight lines. Another 8 aircraft were already in depot. Another was transferred to the boneyard, according to AMC. Major Jonathan Simmons, another Army Marine Corps spokesperson, said Tuesday that the 88 aircraft already inspected were among the 123 C-130s that were in active service at the time of the time compliance technical order. This is a significant progress, and we are proud of the hard work our airmen are putting into thoroughly inspect and safely return these aircraft to the skies, he said. They did not provide a timeline for completing the inspections or finishing any of the required repairs, and the service itself flies the H and J models of the C-130, and the C-130E was retired in 2012, and it also flies the AC-130J, U and W ground attack variants. The Air Force said it would share its findings with other services that fly the C-130 models, and the Navy and Marine Corps began their own assessments of their C-130s aircraft following the Air Force's announcement, while the services have not grounded any C-130 aircraft. Naval Air System Command's Tactical Airlift Program Office began evaluating the fleet for problems, and Lieutenant Travis Callaghan, a spokesperson for Naval Air Forces, told military.com on Friday. Now, I remember seeing a few stories about this online actually this week and regarding these, and they were sort of explaining how they do the repairs and how they strengthen these particular centre wing sections up of the aircraft. But it's quite, I mean, they're quite a robust aircraft, Armando. You know, these aircraft are kind of chucked around the sky and the ground as well. You know, rough landings, off field, you know, landings and stuff.
Yeah, the H and J model C-130s are used worldwide, and they are subjected to some additional stresses. That this has kind of been going on since 2007. So in 2007, I remember there was a huge safety inquiry about C-130 center wing box issues, and the logistics center down in Robbins Air Force Base had to come up with a fix. And they did. So this, you know, considering the number of C-130s that are out there operating, this sort of small chunk of the fleet that met all of the parameters to be stood down, and was a pretty small number, I guess, in the big scheme. But I'm glad they're addressing it, and I'm sure they'll come up with a good fix for it. So.
Nev, interesting story about some naughty Russians next.
Oh, just for a
change. I don't know whether Matt wants to bring up some photos whilst I'm reading this, but it says that in a dramatic aerial intercept reminiscent of the Cold War, a pair of USAF F-22 Raptors, 2 Canadian Forces CF-18s, a US Air Force E-3 Sentry AWACS supported by US Air Force KC-135 Strato tanker, and a C-130 tanker under NORAD control intercepted 2 Russian Tu-95 Bear H bombers over the Arctic Beaufort Seas International Airspace on Thursday, August the 8th. The intercept happened early on Thursday, north of the Alaskan and Canadian coasts. The F-22s involved in the intercept wore the Alpha Kilo tail code of the 477th Fighter Group at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, the very first Air Force Reserve Command F-22 Raptor unit. The likely squadron involved in the intercept was the 302nd Fighter Squadron. The encounter produced some dramatic photos from the crews likely on both sides. These exciting photos from the US and Canadian flight crews were shared on social media only hours after the successful intercept. It's likely that we'll be seeing photos taken from the Russian Bear H's in a few more hours, it says. The ADIZ, or the Air Defense Identification Zone, where the intercept occurred, is in international airspace that extends 200 miles from the US-Canadian coastline and is monitored in the interest of national security. US territorial airspace begins only 12 miles from the coastline. Russian aircraft stayed well clear of the 12-mile US airspace limit during the encounter between the 3 countries. A week ago, radar surveillance showed that 2 Russian aircraft had also entered the ADIZ of Alaska and Canada, but these aircraft were not intercepted by US or Canadian forces. The last encounter between US and Canadian aircraft and Russian aircraft in the region happened back in May, when Russian aircraft entered the ADIS on over 2 consecutive days. While the specific reason for the intercepts are unknown, aircraft sometimes fly near international borders to collect data about a country's air defense network and to collect mapping and signal intelligence to build a communications and early warning order of battle, so that radio and radar frequencies can be identified and catalogued for future use. The missions may happen periodically, as the electronic order of battle is changed frequently to maintain operational security. Russia has flown these missions, whether they are training sorties, electronic intelligence gathering missions, or something else, 2 or 3 times a year during the past few years. Depending on the weather and the time of day, the intercepts, when and if they happen, can produce incredible photos and video. The United States also conducts similar surveillance missions close to Russian open airspace areas for likely related reasons. In a boilerplate official statement about the intercept, NORAD Commander General Terence O'Shaughnessy said NORAD's top priority is defending Canada and the United States. NORAD operators identified and intercepted the Russian aircraft flying near our nations. General O'Shaughnessy went on to say whether responding to violators of restricted airspace domestically or identifying intercepting foreign military aircraft, NORAD is on alert 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. On August the 8th, Russian activity had also taken place in international airspace near the UK and the Baltic Sea. The story goes on to say that RAF Typhoons in quick reaction alert, or QRA, scrambled from RAF Lossiemouth with an RAF Voyager from RAF Bryce Norton to monitor 2 Russian Tu-154 anti-submarine warfare aircraft approaching UK airspace. So there's quite a lot of pictures there as well. And yes, it's nations just testing each other out and just...
Flirting with borders, if you will.
Yes.
These Tu-95s first flew in 1952.
Wow.
Yeah.
Granted, our B-52s have been around just as long.
Yeah, that's true. But as old and as sort of, these aircraft are, they are. I don't know. There's something about them, the Tu-95, that I just find really interesting.
There's something about the word as well, Tupolev.
It's just and he's also, these engines on these as well, they have contra-rotating props, so the props rotate in a different direction each.
Okay, I'm good. Sorry, Mr. Muppet here. It needs to ask a question.
Armando knows.
What does that? Why? What does that mean? What does that do, Mr. Layman here?
Armando.
So aircraft engines generally produce a torque that can be adverse if you lose an engine. So when you add counter-rotating propellers, whether it's in a helicopter or a engine facing forward, what that does is eliminates that adverse torque that is placed on the airframe if you happen to lose an engine. So sometimes you see it like some light twins will have counter-rotating propellers on either side, so one spins left or clockwise, the other one spins counterclockwise. But then there's been designs all the way back to the early years of aviation to put them sort of in line, and there was some pretty cool airplanes produced in World War II actually with counter-rotating propellers up front. And I don't think it was a twin Mustang, but there was a Mustang-esque looking airplane that had 2 propellers up front, and it was that was the purpose of it. And then there's thrust advantages to it, to having 2 propellers up there.
Okay.
Going back to this story, I think it's interesting, and it was mentioned. Captain Nick called me out on this one time on this website, is that the author is a former Italian Air Force second lieutenant, and it's always dubious when you see I was a former second lieutenant, which is where you start in the Italian or in any Air Force, really. That's yeah. So, but I thought it was interesting that he focused on the picture part of it, and sure enough, the it is the Ministry of Defense and the U.S. Air Force and NORAD that are putting out official pictures via Twitter.
Yeah.
As sort of an information operations campaign.
It's kind of a game changer almost, isn't it, really? I mean, when you think...
It really is,
I mean,
yeah.
so secretive normally. Completely understandable. But whether some of this also is a little bit sort of both parties showing off a little bit because there isn't really a lot going on, and so it's an opportunity to get some nice photographs and stuff, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, prior to social media, you had to rely on print news, or maybe it made it to a news story, a television news story, that aircraft were intercepted. But now with the instant access that we have with social media, both of these parties are able to put out their messages
straight away. Yeah, this is true.
Interesting.
So we're going to move on to the last story, and I think this one's been chosen specifically.
Oh.
Well, this one I think has clearly been chosen by Armando for me because he knows how obsessed I am about his fabulous beard. And so, so this is on the Sun newspaper. I'm slightly worried that you've managed to find it over in the States there, mate, so apologies from all of us here for that. And the headline is Royal Hair Force. Oh, even the puns are horrendous. Nev, this is one for you. I
think you should read the whole story in a Royal Air Force.
I say what? Pip pip, chocks away. Yeah. Sorry. So Royal Hair Force. So Hair Force. RAF airmen allowed to grow beards for the first time in Force's 101-year history to promote inclusivity. I'm not entirely sure how that promotes inclusivity. Perhaps it will become clear. So RAF airmen are allowed to grow beards for the first time in the Force's 101-year. I hate it when they do that, where they do the headline and then repeat it. But the fuzz must be trimmed and neat, cover the whole jawline, and be no longer than 10 inches. Senior NCOs will be the arbiters of what qualifies as acceptable. New Chief of the Air Staff, Chief Marshal Mike Wigston, is thought to have agreed to the new policy. An RAF insider said, "It's all about moving with the times, but there will still be rules. We won't be having unkempt beards or wacky designs. It needs to be trimmed and neat. Standards are most definitely not slipping." A spokesman for the force, which allows moustaches, said this change allows serving members of the RAF to wear a smart, neatly trimmed, full-set beard whilst maintaining high standards of appearance. He said it was hoped the move would promote inclusivity, broaden the recruitment pool, and help us retain our highly skilled personnel. Although, to be fair, I would imagine that highly skilled personnel, are not going to refuse to do it because they have to chop off their beard. But anyway, the change will bring the RAF into line with the Royal Navy. The Army does not allow beards unless for religious or medical reasons. It has no plans to change, the MOD said. There we are. That is the story.
I love it.
Yeah, it's
Armando, you can join the Royal Air Force.
You know what? I would join the Royal Air Force just for the fact that I could have a beard.
You would absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just.
I do love the fact that the senior non-commissioned officers will be the arbiters of this,
right?
Which means you'll have a sergeant that is able to go up to a pilot and say, "Meh, I think that's a little too long."
Yes, this is it. And I think some of this will also depend on how well they get on with the individual as to whether they say yes or no. Although perhaps that's a highly controversial thing to say in a time where everybody is equal, I dare say. But it's I don't know, a small part of me is slightly I mean, when you go back to sort of the First and Second World Wars, I mean, and this may be the way that some of these people have been portrayed on TV, but I'm using Blackadder as an example here. Blackadder goes forth, and obviously during that, Stephen Fry had a rather spectacular moustache as part of his thing. Now, I mean, was that a thing in the earlier wars and stuff, where the generals and stuff were sort of sporting fabulous moustaches?
Oh yeah. It has a little bit to do with the aerospace flight equipment, or what do you call it? The aircrew flight equipment aspect to it, the life support equipment. So I think I don't know how World War II masks used to fit on the face, but as the systems get more and more complex, so I know in modern fourth and fifth generation fighter aircraft and our other military aircraft, they or high performance aircraft, even in the civilian world, that mask and the regulator is all fitting, pretty close to the face there, and has to stay on there through high G maneuvers. Now, our brothers over at APG talked about this a little bit from the airline industry, because I think UK airlines have allowed beards for a little while
Right.
US airlines still say, no, it's not a thing for us. You still got to be able to put on your mask. And the debate shall continue, but I was glad to see that the RAF is finally loosening up a little bit.
Absolutely. So that is where we bring the military section to a close. Thank you for some great stories, as always, Armando. We've got, before we start to wrap up, actually, I just want to make special mention, if I may. We've had some cracking emails this week, haven't we? Had a lovely email from new listener Stephen Hitchin, which was really, really nice. Thank you very much for that. Ray Davis, we've had some as well. So we've had loads, and Logan Lynch, obviously. I see we've had an email from a certain Megan Carrion as well. I noticed.
Oh, have we?
Just come in just before we started the show. Yes, we did. Anyway, well, you can look it up and find out. So please do let us. Please do get in touch with the show, because we love to hear from you.
We
do. Feedback, good or bad. We make the show for you. So if you've got any suggestions about how we can improve what you're receiving every week, then do please get in touch. Nev, how do they go about getting in touch with the show?
Well, you can go to our website, which is plaintalkinguk.com. You can go to Twitter at plaintalkinguk. You can go to facebook.com/plaintalkinguk as well. And if you want to email any of us directly, it's either Carlos, Matt, Nev, or Armando at plaintalkinguk.com.
And don't forget, tomorrow, if you are off to the Biggin Hill Festival of Flight, me, Matt and Nev will be there at the show, probably fairly early in the morning.
Yeah.
And safe to say, Matt will be driving the TriStar van, that's for sure. But we'll be there at the show tomorrow, and we're looking forward to getting some great content to play out on future shows of what goes on at Biggin Hill, because for a lot of people, they actually haven't been to the show.
Yeah, because it's the first one for me. I'm really excited. It's going to be good fun.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Have you been there before, Nev?
No, I haven't actually, no. So, first time for me too.
Yeah, can't wait.
Yeah, there's loads going on there tomorrow, so we're very much looking forward to a full, fun-packed show.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's where we need to wrap up, guys. I'm afraid.
Really?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, look, just because you've been missing for what
I
feels
know,
like a century, it's time to bring things to a close. Thank you very much to everyone for watching and listening. Thank you to those on iTunes or wherever it is that you get your podcast from. Thank you so much for downloading this every week. We really do appreciate it. Thank you to our Patreon donators that we mentioned at the top, and our PayPal donators. Don't forget, if you want to donate towards the show also, and you're skint like me, you can do it by just buying things on Amazon as well. If you buy stuff through the link, then we can get vouchers that we can then use towards technical equipment and everything. So that is where we wrap up the show. Everybody needs to say goodbye.
What, really? What, already?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Yeah, it's time to go. Yeah,
So that is it then for episode
I don't want to go.
number 282 of the show. Don't forget to keep your eyes on social media, for we'll be live next week. We will announce
that shortly.
but,
Anyway, come on, because we take forever to wrap up always. So everybody say bye-bye,
we
everyone.
do it on
Bye-bye,
purpose.
bye-bye.
No, don't do it. No,
Bye.
no.